You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast presented by GoHighLevel.com. For a free 30-day trial of the best all-in-one digital marketing software tool on the planet, just go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis. What's going on, money makers? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where it's our mission to help you make more money. If you're new to the show, we release brand new conversations just like this one with unconventional money makers every single day of the week. So if you haven't yet, please be sure to go to your podcast app of choice right now, including YouTube. Follow the show, subscribe to the show so you never miss an opportunity to learn how to make more money. Today on the show, we're going to be talking a little bit about venture capital and exiting businesses, things like that, with my new friend, Alexander Harmsen. Alexander, a tech entrepreneur passionate about AI, finance, and autonomy. He founded PortfolioPilot.com, which is an AI financial advisor with over $30 billion in assets across platform. Previously, he founded and sold Iris Automation, worked on NASA's Mars helicopter, and went through Y Combinator. He's raised over $30 million in venture capital and was recognized by Forbes 30 under 30. So a slacker, really, by all definitions of the word. He's just not really doing anything in life, which is obviously a complete joke. Alex, what's up, dude? Welcome to the show.
Travis, thanks for having me on. It's a good day.
Yes, sir. Hey, it's always a good day, man. The fact that we woke up makes it a good day, right?
Exactly. I'm healthy. Yeah. Learning something new every day. It's a lot of fun.
Can't complain, bro. You know, the thing is, even if you did complain, it's not like it would do any good. So why do it? Let's go back in time a little bit, Alex. Tell me how you made your first dollar ever.
First dollar ever. I mean, feels like a long time ago. I feel like realistically, I was a newspaper delivery man at the age of 8 years old in Canada. And I remember, I actually think there's like maybe a useful story in here even. I remember it was a free paper and we had a paper route. We had about, I think it was probably 150 different houses we delivered to sort of after school, like after middle school, me and my sister, Wednesday, Friday, and we would get 3 cents per paper delivered. And so there was literally nothing we got, there would be almost a fake check that would show up every month. But what we got to do was at the end of every month, go around to every house and basically ask for, we called it collections. And it was basically just like, do you want to tip your, newspaper delivery boy?
Nice.
And
that's a good hustle right there.
Made a system out of it. I had a sheet, 150 houses. If people didn't answer on day one, we would hit them up sometimes 6, 7 different times, basically until we took money. And on average, I think we were making something like $16 an hour. If you counted all the collections piece, the delivery itself, we had optimized. I think we could do 150 houses between the two of us in 21 minutes. That was our record. And then holidays, we would innovate around cards we'd deliver. We'd put it in people's mailboxes from your newspaper carrier.
Nice.
And at Christmas, we'd show up with a little Santa hat and probably looking real cute. And sometimes we would get $20, $25 in tips, times 150 for, I don't know, a couple hours of work. It was, honestly, it was a wild game.
That's not a bad hustle, bro. You know what you learned right there was the value of having a strong product back end. You know what I mean? They weren't making much on the newspaper themselves, but yeah.
Right. Mostly everyone else that we spoke to, just went once. And if the people weren't home, then they would just skip it and just go again next month. But going back repeatedly and then sort of doing a little bit of extra stuff with the little gifts and the little reminders and letters. Awesome. And I remember hand signing, 150 different letters, so it had a personal touch.
That's awesome, dude. Tell me now how you made your most recent dollar. What's changed since 8-year-old you was delivering newspapers?
So like you said, I mean, I worked as a software engineer at a bunch of different startups. I worked at NASA on computer vision models for the Mars helicopter. I created a bunch of different nonprofits, sort of not little organizations in the space industry, aviation. I got my pilot license, started and sold Iris Automation. We can come back to that. But really, Portfolio Pilot is the thing I'm working on today. This AI financial advisor. after selling my previous business, I felt like I got on some sort of list of there was private bankers reaching out and wealth managers and financial advisors, and they all sort of felt like they were selling the same thing, access to their funds. And, it wasn't really clear whether they have any sort of alpha or unique strategy. Sort of just felt like they were salespeople trying to collect, AUM, assets under management, and just like bring you on board, throw you into the system, and then move on to the next person to sell and pull in.
Yeah.
And like we ended up building basically this financial optimization tool that attaches to your life and uses AI and some like hedge fund inspired models to basically just find a whole bunch of different optimization opportunities across taxes and diversification and, potential ways to build a more efficient portfolio and estate planning and life insurance. And I honestly think the crazy thing, my previous business was B2B and enterprise sales, and minimum contracts were like $35,000. And now we're selling a $20 a month subscription product. And we have something like 30,000 users, and most of them I just haven't met. Right? Like it's probably the last dollar I made happened automatically, an hour ago, where someone in Arkansas found Portfolio Pilot from a friend, Google ad, and liked it enough that they, put in a whole bunch of like fairly personal information, got a financial assessment, and then said, okay, this seems legitimate. They're regulated by the SEC. They actually have a fiduciary responsibility. Let me pull out my credit card and pay money. And the system, like, it almost feels like for the first time in life, there is just this that's not really passive income, but this autonomous thing that just somewhere out in the world, I don't even know where the servers are, right? It's all virtual. It's in the cloud, just induces people to pull out their credit card and just pay us money.
Let's unpack
a service, completely on its own.
Yeah, let's unpack the journey a little bit here, bro. You've mentioned so many things. How old are you?
32.
32. Where were you born?
In Holland, actually, in Europe.
Okay. When did you come over to the States?
At 8, I moved to Canada, learned how to speak English, lived in Canada for, the rest of elementary school, middle school, high school, close to Toronto. Okay. I did university, engineering, physics, and economics. Couldn't really decide what I wanted to do, so I sort of just did it all.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like you have like you sound like you have like a unique mixture of like entrepreneurship instincts, but also like a value placed in the traditional education setting that enables you to thrive in multiple areas. Like they tend to, I feel like those two personality types tend to like clash a little bit. Like the engineering mind, entrepreneurship mind tend to clash.
Like recently, there's a bunch of posts on Twitter where people are sharing like, oh, I got a 4.0 GPO, but I still didn't get accepted to Harvard. Why is that? And it feels like the general theme there is like, these are fairly arrogant people that are sort of like anti-establishment, anti-system. Let me just hack on this project.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like to think that, I really like the Peter Thiel philosophy of like, competitions for losers. And so like, if you're really going to do something, you got to do something so unique that, it's rare that you have competition.
Yeah.
And, it sort of feels like you need to go to the edge of some field, or you need to combine a couple different fields and learnings. I did the university thing, but I probably only went to like half my classes at the end of the day. Like I was involved in so many side projects and entrepreneurial things, and started up different organizations, and, convinced 30 like other folks in the engineering department to like go and build a nano satellite together and try to get it launched, and started up the Vancouver Space Society. And we built a humanoid robot at some point and competed in this international competition, and like created the like unmanned aircraft systems team. And
this is all like
the president
during
of
school
Engineers Without Borders at a certain point. And I think mostly it was just like a really exciting time, because it's like very like-minded people, or at least I could find like-minded people, right, in a big university.
Yeah.
And I studied abroad in India for a bit and did all these different internships.
Where did you land right after college?
At a company called Matternet.
Okay, so
Uh,
you went and worked for somebody else first.
it was a startup.
Okay.
Basically, I saw a TED Talk. This guy, Andreas, basically said, like, look, we in the developing world, we have this incredible phenomenon where we just don't have landlines anymore and like fiber in the ground. Like people basically went from no telecommunication services to cell phones.
Hmm.
And it's just way easier than to put a few cell phone towers and give everybody access, India, sub-Saharan Africa. And he said, we'll do the same thing with roads. Like 1 billion people don't have access to roads. And so what we're going to do, instead of building massive infrastructure roads and it's, expensive and there's corruption and monsoons and whatnot, we'll just build drone package delivery to get these people food and water and medicine. And I contacted him. I was like, I want to work for you. No response. I contacted him again. No response. And I said, like, I think I contacted him 5 times and no response. And I found a phone number that he had included in some brochure to investors on some website, called the number, left a message, called the number again, left another message. Finally, he said, dude, you have to stop calling me. Like, we're a 2-person company. Like, we don't even have funding yet. Like, we don't have any sort of positions open for you. And I said, like, no problem. Like, let's just try it out for a month. I'm sure it'll work out. And then sort of silence for a month. And he came back and said, okay, we have some funding now. And like, we just hired this like chief engineer, but we still don't have sort of like a software engineering position open. No, especially not for like a junior engineer just out of school. And I said, no problem. Give me a shot. He's like, well, you're Canadian too. I don't even know how to figure out the visa situation. I was like, don't worry, I'll figure that out for you. Like, I'll get a lawyer, we'll figure it out. And eventually, I think the relentlessness just like he just caved. He's like, okay, talk to the chief engineer. Like, obviously, we can find stuff for you to do. And I moved down and I worked with them for about a year. And like, it was so freaking cool. Like, it was, we're doing drone package delivery before Amazon had even announced that they were doing drone package delivery. In that year, it was like in 2015, 2014, Jeff Bezos announced like by 2020, we're going to have 1 million drones doing package delivery in the continental US. And suddenly we got a whole bunch of money. They like expanded the team, right? Because we were sort of the first ones. And then Amazon announced, like, obviously this is going to be a thing. We went to Bhutan and worked with the WHO doing like drone package delivery in the Himalayas, medicine delivery. I met the prime minister of Bhutan. We went to Papua New Guinea. Like, there's all these sort of, and it was like we were crashing drones every single day. At a certain point, one of them flew away and we like ended up just tying a string to the ones going forward. But the reason we were crashing, because it was just like, okay, we're doing 14-hour like work days every single day. It's like, we're in a race against Amazon to like get this package delivery network launched. And like, it's like we wrote the code. It's 90% likely that it's going to work, but it's going to take another couple of days to test it to like 99.9%. Let's just put in the air, fly, and we'll realize if it actually works or not.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's like this mentality. And I think it became pretty clear to me, like in that year, that I learned a lot about fundraising and selling and marketing. And there's like something deep tech about this. Like, clearly there's like a big regulatory challenge ahead of us. We weren't going to really make money for years and years ahead of time. Also, just a bunch of obvious issues. Like, there was a lot of build buy decisions that we're trying to make. And, but in the back of my mind, I was always really trying to figure out, like, should I get a PhD? Should I like continue on and really truly go to the edge of the field to figure out, like, to do something unique and new? And I decided the compromise was like, let me go and work at NASA, the Jet Propulsion Lab, very closely with this Caltech professor. And that was sort of like an academic environment where I could still work on something really cool and work on some of these very cutting edge computer vision models for this Mars helicopter. And it was like some of the most incredible people I've ever worked with. But like, the gates opened every day at this facility at 7 a.m. And so I was there at 7:01 every day. And the gates closed at 7 p.m. So I I bet most times I got kicked out by security guards, like 7:05. And it was so cool what we were working on. But most of my colleagues came in at 10 a.m. and then they would have a coffee. And then it was lunchtime. Then they had like a really cool guest lecture right after lunch. And then it was sort of like time to work 2 to 4. And then they were like, we'd go home to like pick up their kids and, finish the day. And it was so different than the 14 hours a day startup environment. Yeah. And so basically after that year at NASA, I said, it's very clear. I'm not going to be in some academic environment, PhD. I mean, it's cool. I learned a lot and I'm together with very interesting people. But I think it's probably better if I just hire those people from my own startup and just find the PhDs in computer vision that like I can learn from every day. And that's sort of how I created Iris Automation. Sort of like some of the needs from Matternet and drone package delivery together with the like some of the learnings and sort of cutting edge computer vision into this new company. And I mean, in hindsight, it was sort of serendipitous. It was exactly the right move to do Matternet first and then NASA.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about Iris Automation. So when you were working at NASA, did you already kind of start formulating the idea for the business, or did you leave NASA with the idea to pursue full-time entrepreneurship regardless of what that project was going to be?
I had an idea, I think it was pretty clear. So if I thought about the drone package delivery market, working in Matternet, there was like obvious, clear issues that were going to emerge over the next 5 years. And like one of them was like, how do we build very reliable aircraft? Right? Leave that to a bunch of mechanical engineers and a whole bunch of testing. Like there's something about sort of like an air traffic control system. That was kind of interesting, but there was other people working on that already. And then one of the biggest problems that just no one knew how to solve was like, how do we get radar miniaturized enough and low power enough to put on every single one of these drones so they can navigate in the airspace and avoid other terrain, but also like other aircraft, right? Like little Cessna flying in a field, in Kansas, like that's the big problem. And I think working at NASA is sort of like something clicked for me. It was like everyone else is working on this problem everyone's thinking about this the wrong way. Like everyone else is thinking over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be able to miniaturize radar in some way, which is very difficult, right? Like this hardware problem, you're very much constrained by like just physics. And I thought like humans don't need radar to see and avoid other aircraft. Like what if we just use computer vision to detect and avoid other aircraft? Like that could be the solve to fly, beyond visual line of sight, autonomously, in the national airspace. And it was so obvious to me, I think, working at NASA. It wasn't like the specific computer vision algorithms I was working on there, made its way into Iris, but like these two concepts that's connected so well that I said, okay, I don't know exactly how to do this. There's something about being young and naive that is extremely helpful in a situation like this.
Sure.
I didn't have any dependencies, I had a little bit of money in my pocket. And I basically just said, like, for the next year, I think I can just get an apartment with a friend of mine who ended up becoming my co-founder and just hack on this thing and see if it works. See if we can make it happen. Let's build a prototype. Let's talk to potential customers. Let's raise some money. And it worked. And even now, we started this in 2015. 10 years later now, basically there's one competitor. And that competitor is basically they're only using the tech for the one drone delivery system. And basically everybody else in the industry needs to use our tech.
Wow. So everybody else in the industry being even self-driving cars and things like that?
Like flying autonomous vehicles. Air taxis, drone package delivery. I mean, the biggest market here is commercial drones. Anyone that wants to fly more than a mile away from an operator, it's known as beyond visual line of sight. Basically, as soon as you lose sight of it, you can't clear the airspace around the drone anymore. It's a lot of commercial aviation. It's pipeline inspections, forest management. It's agricultural surveys, it's cargo delivery in like Alaska, it's vaccine delivery in countries around the world that don't have roads or don't have constant access to roads. There's like a whole bunch of drone package delivery that's actually taking off, not really in the US, but like internationally. There's all these sort of like air taxi initiatives. It's like probably at this point a $20-30 billion industry already that is reliant on this. Like there's one crucial part of the stack, that this company controls. Right. And
so wild that no other competitors have popped up.
It's regulatory capture. That's a huge part of it. Right? It's just very difficult to get something like this approved. Right? We spent 5 years basically just doing demonstrations for the FAA and other civil aviation authorities around the world. It's just very difficult to build. These are like cutting edge
one of those companies
vision algorithms. It's very difficult to test. Right? You basically need tens of thousands of actual near midair collisions between a drone and an aircraft. Right. And so no one was willing to do this. Right. I was like, at a certain point, I called 100 different flight schools, like, I need to take one of your pilots and basically just like go within 300 feet of our drone with our collision avoidance system on board. And they were like, screw you. Are you kidding me? Like, no, like, exactly. That's got to break a whole bunch of rules. And so we ended up finding this bush pilot out of Alaska who was like, yeah, this sounds cool. Let's do it. Hired him. We bought an aircraft and like we ended up painting it a bunch of different colors and, different configurations and different lighting conditions. And then like we hired a team of like drone operators to just like go into the desert, like in Nevada, desert, mountains, city, every single day and just do like, we racked up something like 25,000 mid-air collisions as part of this test data set for our models, but also there's like an evaluation set that we could share with the government. And then like 4 months in, it got like a little bit dicey, as you can imagine, like, well, you can't have an actual crash, right? Yeah. And so how do we actually think about this? And so we ended up hiring this like retired naval captain and like checklists for everything, incredible guy, like military precision to everything. Like if we set the limit at 300 feet, like maximum, close range, like there was not a single one of those 25,000 encounters that like crossed 300 feet.
That's
right? Like,
crazy.
Lines on the ground, 0600. The team was like ready with the trailer to go into the field every day. Kind of wild, but like, you figure it out.
Sure.
What's the lesson from all of this? There's something about just like, you got to be a little bit crazy, but like there's all these challenges along the way. And, if I go back in time to 2015, we wasted so much time on just like random things that we should not have focused on. And I like to think that this time around, like it's all those lessons learned that like make me a better CEO. But
yeah, well, this is like
made a whole bunch of mistakes this time around too.
This is one of those case studies that proves the value of venture capital. There's like venture capital has wasted a lot of money on a lot of companies, but these are the ones that you look at and you go like, yeah, I mean, it would have been impossible to make this work without funding. Like you are literally, you have to do years of research and development before you actually have a product that you can go sell. How long was it until you like landed your first contract?
So I think, so we went through YC in the first year.
Okay.
Right. And so probably 9 months in, prototyping, talking to customers, sort of figuring this out. We ended up in YC, moved down to San Francisco. Like we started in Vancouver and we moved down to San Francisco. We thought it was going to be 3 months and decided to stay, just like the environment, access to venture capital, talents, just like there's something intoxicating about just like every party you go to is just like people building stuff and, starting something new. And during YC, it was very like we spent a lot of time arguing with the partners about like what the KPI should be, right? They basically said, look, everybody should spend the 3 months of YC just like taking whatever your revenue number is right now and just like 10xing it. So you have this incredible revenue ramp. You can get on a stage, 2-minute pitch, 500 investors, this is clearly working. Look at the exponential growth curve. And we said, we don't have revenue. We have zero plans to get to revenue by the end of the 3 months. They said, well, you still need some sort of proof, right? Like whether your computer vision system works, 81% or 83%, like isn't going to interest the investors. Like you need to show some real commercial traction, which I thought was, in hindsight, incredible advice. Like, we ended up like focusing on this, and we said, we made one of those like thermometer, like fundraising thermometer type posters and put on the wall. And we said, we're going to get to $10 million of contracts signed by the end of the 3 months, with like a massive clause in there that is like, it is non-binding and
fully dependent on our ability to deliver.
Fully dependent on us delivering the tech and delivering the regulatory approvals. And it's like, but the idea, like, if you can get people to sign even that, clearly it shows promise, right? And so I don't think we reached 10 million, but I think we got to like 3 or 4 million, which was huge. And we had all these conversations about requirements, and it forced us to rethink our entire strategy. And like, was this going to be something we mounted on the drones, put on the ground? When is it actually going to be ready? How do we even prove, like, how do you define the tech is ready?
Sure.
Alex, it feels so subjective. We could define it, but it's not good enough for like whatever, agricultural survey inspection company. And it also became pretty clear that like no one really wanted collision avoidance. And of the 2 clauses, they didn't really care about whether it's ready or not. All they cared about was, does it get me the regulatory approval to fly more than 1 mile away from an operator? Which was like, it felt like a bit of a slap in the face, because like everyone a year ago had told us they wanted collision avoidance systems. But when we really dug into it and actually decided to like, put pen to paper, it's like, what would you sign? It's like, well, it's honestly can be the best collision avoidance system in the world, but I want the regulatory approval. That's the real unlock for my business. And so I think when we actually got the first dollar, it was not for the collision avoidance system. It was not for the regulatory approval. It was for consulting services to take our regulatory approval and our tech and actually just adjust someone's like con ops, basically concept of operations. Like every single drone company, the way they get approvals and they're allowed to fly in a new area, it's basically write out sort of like the safety case. So someone paid us $20,000 to write the safety case for them 5 years into the business. And then once we wrote the safety case and that got approved, then they bought our $35,000 collision avoidance system. And so like we were charging $8,000, I think, for the regulatory approval package that came along with that. And so like at the end of the day, the real unlock was this, like the regulatory services to write the safety case, right? Like, I mean, I heard a story recently about like my kids. I have 2 toddlers and like they love mac and cheese, right? But like apparently someone had just like sold powdered cheese, and like that was sort of the original mac and cheese. And like at a certain point, like no one really knew what to do with it. Like you needed to obviously buy the macaroni as well. At a certain point, they started just buying big stacks of these like macaroni boxes and just taking the macaroni and the cheese packet and just like putting a rubber band about it, just selling it as a whole.
Yeah.
And that was suddenly like easy, ready to make food, in less than 10 minutes. It was obvious to people, like this is the combination, the winning combination. Suddenly it exploded in craft and, blah, blah, blah. But there's like, sometimes the packaging is like all the difference.
Well, sometimes it's just like you set out to solve a certain problem and then realize along the way that this isn't actually the problem that people want solved. That's why this is the difference between success and failure in entrepreneurship in this sense, man, is like some people, we get too married to our original ideas and are not willing to be flexible along the way, even if it means redoing everything, even if it means starting from scratch. It's the ability to remain flexible once you're deep into that sunk cost fallacy, that right there is a skill by itself. So,
I think you're absolutely correct. Even now with Portfolio Pilot, like I think we've probably pivoted, like hard pivoted 8 times.
wow.
And like first there was like these global predictions models. There's so like, my co-founder worked at Bridgewater for a long time. And so there's something about like, how do we take Bridgewater models and make it accessible to more people? And then like, should we sell to wealth managers, and the wealth managers and financial advisors actually like they saw this as this really cool sales tool, right? Like ask a bunch of questions, get one person's account and then show them on the spot, optimization opportunities. That makes you look like a genius, right? But then they didn't really want to use it for actual personalized financial advice and as a tool going forward. That sounds like a headache, right? If I have 100 clients I'm managing, I want to give them the exact same advice. I want to put them in the exact same positions. If I got one question, I'll just answer it in an email to all clients, all in one go. It's like makes the managing easier, lets me focus on new sales. And so like from that, we thought we need to just do investing advice. Like no one is going to take investing advice unless we take into account your tax situation, right? We can't tell you to sell some of your Tesla or sell some of your, whatever SPY position unless we also calculate the tax impact. If you've been holding it for 10 years, tax impact is way different than, if you just bought it a week ago. Your income, the state you live in, makes all the difference. And like how we can't give good advice unless we also consider your sort of life situation, liquidity needs, long-term goals, how old you are, your risk preference, whether you care about dividends or not, and income investing, are you on track for retirement or not? I mean, there's so many different pieces involved in that.
Right.
And even now, like we often talk about Portfolio Pilot as your personal AI financial advisor. And the main problem we have with that is that like technically it's descriptive. Like, it's an advisor that gives you advice as a self-directed investor. But when we talk to people, they immediately think, oh, that's probably just another robo-advisor. Like they're probably going to try to manage my money. And we run all these tests and like on our landing page, as you can imagine, we change our like website like constantly, right? We're running lots of different tests. And right now we have something like personalized financial advice for self-directed investors. And we're running this test. And like, yesterday we got a bunch of results back and people said, it kind of feels like an oxymoron. How can you give financial advice to self-directed investors? Like self-directed investors means they're not working with a financial advisor. And so like we're considering some other big, like I feel like there's probably one big pivot left. Things are working pretty well, right? 30,000 users, $30 billion of assets on the platform, bunch of funding, making money. But like for this to really go mainstream, I think, and like have some sort of like, some narrative command, I think we probably need to invent a new term, or there needs to be some like big messaging change. Something along the lines of like, maybe it's better if we just call it an investing coach. Or maybe a co-pilot. It feels obvious to me that if we fast forward 5 to 10 years from now, every single person is going to have like sort of a network of coaches personalized to their situation, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be and AI coaches, right? My like fitness instructor that like monitors everything I eat, gives me personalized, diet information, exercise, builds a personalized plan, depending on how much I slept last night. Medical advice, legal advice, therapy, and financial advice as well, right? And what is that network of coaches around you, co-pilots, guides?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's probably better to lean into that narrative, sort of like it's inevitable. AI is going to personalize all these expert systems around you. And one of those is going to be your Portfolio Pilot, your personal financial guide or your financial life optimizer. I don't know exactly what it is, but I absolutely just agree with what you said. Like you need to be willing to pivot and react and change.
Yeah.
And I actually think like the main key to success is someone said this recently and I love it. And it's just so true. Like basically the only way to be successful is to just not die. Like
To stay in the
your
game.
startup only stops and it goes bankrupt, and once you give up on the idea, once you stop working on it. And like obviously there's like everyone has different life pressures, and like I think I've been quite fortunate that I have this exit, and I've a little bit more freedom now. But like I think a lot of very successful known brands today, like things just didn't work for the first 5 years, and then there was just something changed.
Yeah.
Culture changed. There was some new technology that combined with the thing you were working on for 5 years suddenly explodes, or you finally got the messaging right. You finally solved like the last bug.
Yeah.
And like there's a certain persistence or stubbornness, depending on which way you look at it, that is absolutely crucial to like making it big, I think.
Alex, it's been a fascinating conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on the show and chat a little bit today. Where can people go to get more stuff from you?
Obviously, I would love for people to sign up for Portfolio Pilot and get a second opinion, AI financial advice. Like even just the first assessment is free at portfoliopilot.com. And then follow me on Twitter, probably most active there. Alex Harm is my handle, or x.com.
Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah, Alex Harm over on X/Twitter/whatever you want to call it. And then go check out portfoliopilot.com for an AI financial advisor. Bro, thanks so much for taking the time to share some wisdom with everybody on the show today. Everybody else listening, remember, money only solves your money problems, but it's a little bit easier to solve the rest of your problems if you got some money in the bank. So let's solve that problem first here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. Peace out.